Hello friends, welcome to another Ask a Bhante. This week we have a question from Toxicologist, who I believe he asked this question in the chat of, I think 2 Ask a Bhantes ago. So this is a way that if you do have a question that you want me to answer, please put it in the chat there and I can see it, or send it to me some other way. And remember, this is not just a question for you. Even if you have an idea for a good question that might be beneficial for other people, new people coming to see the videos, right? Because these videos are here for everybody, for an indefinite future. So it's not just for you, but you ask a question for all beings who would also benefit from the question too, which is a good thing. So, but Toxicologist asks, how is your meditation practice? Do you think all techniques, the different vipassanas, visuddhimagga, jhanas, sutta jhanas, etc., are equal? Which ones do you have experience with? This is like 18 questions, but it's kind of one topic anyway. It's one theme. How has your journey been? Another question: is it possible to live an isolated monthly lifestyle nowadays, just like the monks at the time the Buddha did? What is your experience with that? Thank you. So I think I'll tackle the second section first. Is it possible to live an isolated monthly lifestyle yet nowadays? Sure. But see, this is one thing that should be understood. All right, from the earliest times, you can see it in the suttas. From the earliest times, there's no such thing. The Buddha didn't really set it up that you would be some kind of isolated hermit as a monastic. This is really not kind of part of early Buddhism, right? The point, you could see it very clearly, that the Buddha, like, you basically lived in the wilderness. Aranya, wilderness is basically anything like a kilometer, mile or so outside of a village, right? So you lived in the wilderness, doing your thing, doing your meditation, and then every day you'd go into the village, have interactions with the lay people, share Dhamma with them, get food from them, and then you'd go back into the wilderness and, and then eat and then practice, right? And the Buddha says he gives advice about, not staying too close to the village, not being too far from the village, but just at the right distance so that it's not too much of a struggle to get in, get your food, do your business, and then go back out, right? So from the earliest days, there's always this connection with laity, right? There's always this kind of, you need to see the lay people and be with the lay people at least for a short time every day. Right, so this whole kind of like, I'm going to be totally secluded and separate from people is not really, not really the original intent, as it were. Right, it's kind of a balance of being by yourself, having time to practice, having little duties, living lightly, right, having more freedom to practice. But you still have that duty to be with the lay people, right? You still have, like as the Buddha and as Mahakassapa says, that, until you're awakened, you live life as a debtor, as a monastic, right? So, so you have to kind of keep this idea of the fourfold assembly in mind. Laymen, laywomen, bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, etc. You have to keep this idea because this is very important, right? So in that regard, in terms of the old ways, somebody technically living in the city could be that way. Like, for instance, when I stay at the Indonesian Buddhist vihara, I see the people once a day. They come and bring my food and we talk to them and how everything's going, and maybe we, chant for them or whatever. And then they leave and I don't see them until tomorrow. I can see people if I go for my walk, walk in the city and I see people. But other than that, I can be completely secluded and not have to talk to anybody for the rest of the day. And that's in the middle of the city, right? So, and when you are in a forest monastery, it can be the same way. You might not be close enough that people are coming to bring food every day, maybe just on the weekends. But there is this balance between community and solitude, right? And this is a very important thing to understand, this balance. I remember listening to a Thai forest Ajahn talk about how, sometimes they would have monks that would be kind of very secluded for many, many years, and they'd hit like a rut in their practice. And this was in, I think this was Ajahn Chah, maybe even Ajahn Brahm's tradition, I'm not sure. But so what this Ajahn would say was, that they would actually bring this person out. Oftentimes they were an Ajahn. There's not like a new monk, but somebody maybe who's been kind of secluded for like 10 years, 15 years. They would bring them out and they would make them teach and be around people. And that would kind of break their, break their hurdle, break their stoppage in their practice, right? So it's very important to understand that there is this balance that should be struck, right? You shouldn't be hanging out with the lay people all day, acting like a lay person, but nor should you be a total hermit and say, I'm not going to see anybody for the next 20 years, right? Monastics need to be completely and fully supported, right? They live like newborn babies, at the behest and at the generosity of the lay people. So it's very important that you have that balance. And even at the time of the Buddha, you can see in the suttas at the time of the Buddha that that grew a diversity of ways of living a monastic lifestyle, right? There were monks that were more city monks, and there were monks that were forest monks. Right, and there even were the beginnings of the debates between the study monks and the practice monks. Right, we see this even 2,600 years later. Right, but this kind of little tension between these two types. But I think that's why the Buddha always encourages the balance. Right. Of the four people, it says, of the four people, there's many types of four people, but these two are one who practices for oneself and for others, and one who both studies and practices, right? The Buddha praises that being, right? This balance, this middle ground, this synthesis of the two things, not one extreme or the other. Right. What is your experience with that? I've experienced a couple, but basically all the different ways. But the main thing at Bhavana, with lots of work, lots of responsibility, I've experienced the balance of being my own practice kind of being sacrificed, and my own development being sacrificed for others, which is not good. Right? It's not good either. You need to find a balance. It's one of the main reasons why I left. So that I could have the balance, right? To work on myself and to also help others. So, and that's how my journey's been. Okay, so now do you think all techniques are equal? Which ones do you have experience with? So I wouldn't say that all techniques are equal, nor would I say that all techniques lead to the same place. But I would say also that each person has proclivities and tendencies that might lead them towards have more fruit from specific practices over other practices. For instance, with me, it was walking meditation. Sitting for years and it being a struggle and not really getting major insights and not really. And then as soon as I started walking meditation, it just shot off, right? And that was because that's my proclivities, my tendencies, the causes and conditions of this body all those factors, right? So you have to, the important thing is to practice and to try the different techniques and to see what works, right? For me, it's very important that, because my framework for both study and practice is the early text, the suttas, that I basically kind of stick within that framework. Because I've been doing this now, I've been meditating 17 years. I've basically tried it all. I went through it for a little bit, for a very, very brief period of a couple of weeks. I even tried kasina meditation and these things, right? And so for me, though, what has worked best for me was I like practical, pragmatic teachings. And the teachings that are found in the early texts of the Buddha, of the early texts, those are the ones that, for me, work the best. And so those are the ones that I follow. I don't read visuddhimagga and try all these different things and things like that. At least not anymore. I think it's important to go through that phase of trying the different things, seeing what works for you. The difference between visuddhimagga jhanas or sutta jhanas, all these things, the jhanas are a complicated topic, right? You can even look at like 5 different monastics and they'll talk about, almost in essence, 5 different jhanas. Like you hear like Bhante Ji talk about the jhana, and you hear Ajahn Brahm talk about the jhana, and there can be lots of confusion that arises from that, right? The answer is to practice and find out for yourself. That's the answer, right? You're never going to get just easy answers just by reading and following what a teacher says. You have to put it into practice and find out for yourself. That is how you know for yourself, right? That's how you know. That's how you weed the wheat, separate the wheat from the chaff. Right? You can't just go many, many years and years and years practicing 18,000 different types of meditation practice. You'll get nowhere, right? It's like digging 1,000 small holes instead of one deep hole, right? You don't get wisdom from that. So it's very important that, you find what works for you and then you practice. And so this is why I don't get involved in like, this one is worse than these, and this is a stupid technique and all this stuff. I don't get involved in that. For me, it's just whatever works for me, and it should be whatever works for you. Investigate, try, practice, see what works, and then go with what works.